What is going on with websites nowadays? You click on most of them and right away you're redirected to their store, their products, or their services. Why is this, and why has this strayed so far from how websites used to be, where, yeah, there were jarring colours and suspicious pop-ups, but it was engaging. There was originality to be had, more notably a fountain of untapped creativity that catered to the website's niche. That's right, not every website used to look the same. Well, let's break it down and investigate the specifics surrounding websites. There's the creativity aspect and how it is in crisis, the motive surrounding website creation with whether they're price incentivized or peer produced, and furthermore, the rise in apps and fallen websites. We'll also explore this through the lens of media industries and ownership. All of this is to investigate the idea of why creativity is important in the media industry, and how this specifically applies to websites. Now, before we get started in on any of this, you may be asking, why websites? Well, we use them every day. They provide a link to information and content. In fact, as explored here, websites go beyond an exchange of knowledge. They actively involve the viewer in how they are designed, how the information is received. Or rather, this was how it was seen in 2003, at the time the journal article was written, when websites were actively a service instead of just redirecting you to one. Websites were once part of the whole creation, curated to fit a theme, and, were engaging as well. Now, most of them are just used to promote a product. We're going to look at this and look at websites as part of a bigger problem. Monopolization of media, the motives and profit, and rise in other more engaging platforms. When we look at websites and what leads to them being so monopolized and profit-driven, we look to the theory of media ownership, of media industries, and those who control the distribution and production of media. When we look at websites nowadays, you'll notice how similar and minimalistic all the interfaces are. As found here, when a website is simple, it is distinctive and uncomplicated. It creates an interface that has broad appeal and flat design elements that sell. Minimalism is nothing new, however, its use in websites is increasingly so as the media becomes more monopolized. This idea is explored in the public sphere with Joan Lidberg saying that profit is the driver, not delivering public interest. Interactive websites are no longer seen as economically viable, especially when you can cater to a broader audience and gain a profit. This is where the creativity crisis comes into play, where money is more valuable than innovation. Creativity is deliberate. It's a process and trait that reveals itself through the things that we create. Websites as an example. Through utilizing creativity, you learn something. That's its purpose. As found here, an understanding of creativity stems from exploration. That is what a lot of those older websites did in the early 2000s. Explored the new platform that, was the internet and showing off new content. And look, I get that things change, media change is inevitable, but it shouldn't be at the cost of natural human exploration. A success in creativity used to be measured by innovation, new ideas being sought out. However, with the world becoming more global and characterized by consumption attitudes, this focus on exploration has just fizzled out. It can be argued that newer websites are being creative in exploring the minimalist style. However, when there's no variability to it and it all just looks the same, it's no longer an exploration. This lends itself further to the motives behind website creation and whether it's price incentivized or peer produced. It's important to explore the motives behind website creation to understand why so many of them are boring nowadays. This can be explored through the concepts of price incentivization and peer production. Such concepts are elaborately explored by these authors on this article, where a peer-produced website is one made for content creation and knowledge sharing, most notably seen with Google, whereas a price-incentivized website is for profit, usually seen with commercial websites. it is impossible nowadays to find an explicit divide between the two, as there are elements of both seen in every website. We see this with content used for profit and advertisements seen on peer-produced websites. This links back to the media ownership theory with the monopolization of media, as so many of them are just indistinguishable from the other, and the measure of a website's success being based on the money made from it. There is a motivator of broad appeal behind websites nowadays. This is further linked to a growing interest in other platforms like apps and the fall of websites as they try to keep appealing to a broader and broader audience. Now, as stated before, media change is inevitable. It's unlikely for one type of media to remain relevant, or even the same for an extended period. We see this even more so in the digital age with the shift from websites to apps. Much of the functions that made older websites interesting, whether they were used as an online multiplayer game or mindless fun, are now found on mobile apps. This renders apps as a more accessible mode of engagement compared to websites, especially considering how handheld it is and easy to access at any moment. In this article, these authors explore this through the idea that boredom is rising in the digital age. They're not saying that digital means are the sole cause, however, it does contribute. They find that because of the accessibility of phones and apps, one's desired levels of engagement are pushed up. Where they might have been engaged with something like browsing a website before, it is no longer engaging if there is the capacity to do more through other means. This is linked to the decline in websites as an engaging platform, as it's not as accessible as something like an app. Furthermore, reducing the need to be creative and innovative on something that is deemed as dying. Despite this, it's still so important that websites promote the right message, that they don't veer completely into commercialism like the Barbie website has done. This was an idea, among other things, that was brilliantly explored in this video. The Barbie website used to have mini-games catered to a young tween girl audience, however, that wasn't exclusive. There was this mini-game that would allow the user to dress up a Barbie with new alternating outfits available weekly. Now when you go onto the Barbie website, it redirects you straight to the shop. The reason for this change is partly from the collapse of Flash, which ran the games, but also from the brand, wanting to make more money. This is a true example of a profit-driven industry, as the brand exploited the fact that they were already known enough without having to engage people into wanting their products. In other words, they didn't want to spend money on making the experience of being a Barbie fan any more enjoyable. And with this, it's also important to consider the audiences of websites. The Barbie website was catered to fans of it. Now, what kind of a message does it give to those fans, who are usually young girls, when you change the interactivity and fun of before and replace it with direct brand promotion? This website lends itself to all the themes discussed before, with the decreased interest in promoting original content, instead falling into the pattern of simply promoting a brand to gain a profit. Now, there could be an argument, I made this argument earlier, that websites are no longer economically viable to place all the effort into them like we did before, but this shouldn't be true. It isn't. There are still incredibly amazing websites out there, you just have to know to look for them. This shows that it can be viable, that there shouldn't be an excuse as to why people can't put more into websites. More originality. It is important that we understand the kinds of output being seen every day. With websites, an example of a much wider issue in the loss of creativity in the media space. And with that comes the end of this video. Thank you so much for listening to me rant for around 10 minutes. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye!